All righty. Well, it looks like we're recording, Adam. We're ready to go. How's everybody doing? This is obviously a non-live show. And as always, we're here on Tuesday nights to talk about the upcoming race weekend's outright bets. And that is at Homestead, Miami. And it is a mile and a half. It's a very interesting track and covers a lot of tire wear. And in the past, at least with this car, it's been running a fall and has been running the spring, but not in this car. But the majority of the races have been running the fall. But, you know, the racing on here is usually pretty good. So what are your thoughts here, Adam?
Well, my first thought to you would be, do we not want to touch on the debacle, which was last week? Do we want to skip over the debacle that was Las Vegas?
I mean, if you really want to, we can, but it's been a rough 48 hours for me. You know, usually
Well, I would just say, happy that some of the guys on the offshore finally got to take advantage. It seems like those guys kind of get shafted more than anybody. So nice, a couple guys got that home, but I distinctly remember saying at the end of our outright show last Tuesday, what about Josh Berry? And I ate a whole lot of shit at the end of that for that. So he did me in. Joshua Berry did me in.
Well, that's just part of my thoughts. I guess since you opened up this can of worms, man, we might as well delve into it. Yeah, it's been a long, rough 48 hours. Very frustrating. You know, as everybody knows, in order to get the numbers that we need to in NASCAR, probably 50 to 60% of your plays have to be parlayed. You know, obviously during the race, you can get some, decent numbers. But prior to that, it's mostly parlays. And, believe it or not, I don't like doing the parlays. I hate them. It's a pain in the butt. There's a lot of research involved, not only in the NASCAR piece, obviously, but then the parlay piece. I like to use the golf pieces. It gives me a shot at the beginning of the week. Then, if they fail, I always have an opportunity with UFC. So there's a lot of research, a lot of time invested in that. So then you got to sweat that. Hope that they get through. They get through and you have good numbers. And we had a race on Sunday. Chris Bell was never really in it. Byron somewhat had a chance. Reddick pretty much took himself out with the strategy. And then Larson. Those were the ones we were on. And, I would do the same four over again. But when you get those four in, or when you get any parlay in, and then you have a strategy by, Larson and Byron and Blaney, a couple other drivers where they pit and they probably overreacted because they had just pitted and the other drivers chose to stay out and they took advantage of the track position. But, you get those through, things don't work out. It's very frustrating. But I think one of the most frustrating pieces to me is the books. 19 laps left when we went green. They ran their, reports. They said, after one or two laps, Josh Berry have hardly any handle on him whatsoever. Daniel Suarez, hardly any handle on him. No need to open up. Let's just hope it plays out. We've seen in cases where Caesars, ESPN, Bet365 have all been open 5, 6, 7, 8 laps left in the race. But this week, that week, They ran them reports and said, no, it's our advantage to stay closed. And
Well, do you think it's
that's
that, or do you
very,
think that they
very,
just
very
any
frustrating.
way to play that out? Because like with the newer tires, right? Wasn't Chastain and Larson and Byron and those guys on fresher tires than Suarez and Barry, or not?
They were, but like it's 10 laps, maybe. It wasn't many
Right,
laps,
right, right.
not many at all. And they went down. They thought gas, that'll get us to the end. No more cautions. We'll be great. Which, is one thing. But there were 70 some laps left. And
Yeah.
if there was any caution after 20 laps, they had to come in because the drivers were going to come in too. And, after 20 laps, and there was only like 5 or 6 of them. So the guys who pitted wouldn't be very far back behind them.
Right.
They probably would have overtaken them. So, they just overreacted, in my opinion, to that pit stop. And, it is what it is. But yeah, it's very frustrating to do all that. So, and
Right. And I think that the biggest thing to me is like variance just reared its head. We were just chugging along great these last couple weeks, and that one humbling race kind of sets you back. So
well, yeah, that too. But the thing that irritates me is like open the books. Like you can't. Like in football, in basketball, they all have cutoff times. All right, on certain lines, and there's no consistency whatsoever in NASCAR. Like I hate betting at MGM because they shut it down basically come the third stage. They're one of the first books to close every single week. Every week. DraftKings, probably not far behind them. FanDuel, they're iffy. Sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not. But Caesars, 365, and ESPN have been the faithful. And they gave us
you
the
just
big
can't bet live at Caesars, though. They instantly made Josh Berry minus 300.
So give you the
They
big
stayed a lot. They stayed closed a lot longer than I thought they would too. So I don't know. It is what it is. We were on the right drivers. We were on the best car. Kyle Larson definitely had the best car in the race. It just things didn't shake out. What are you going to do? So, all right. Well, let's move
I don't
on.
know.
Unless you got some more.
No, I mean, and then, I got the news yesterday. I got to work this weekend. So I don't know what I'm going to do, if I'm going to make any bets or not. So then I start looking at the golf. All right. Well, FanDuel has make cuts. They usually give you individual players. Not this week. It's whatever you want to call it, of 3 or 4 golfers, pre-selected, predetermined, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
So that messes that up. Go to DraftKings. Nope. We decided not to do it so far this week. Go to 365. Yeah. We'll give you a choice of 14 players. 14 players.
Well, before we start talking about the places where you want to go and the parlay pieces you want, let's start diving into some of these outrights, because this could be a slippery slope.
So, and then one more thing, like with the race, that's irritating too, is from a fan perspective, I like Josh Berry. Josh Berry did us good in Xfinity. Very, very, very popular win. Not only him, but for the Wood brothers. But you can't enjoy it, which sucks.
Well, yeah, like I'm happy for Josh Berry, but obviously upset with the outcome because of the opportunities that we had. Now, your fastest laps kind of got us home, the most fastest laps that kind of limited some of the damage, but it was not a great race. We'll just leave it at that.
What did you think of the race in general?
I don't know. Did you notice that they had a softer right side tire? I think, or maybe it was the left side. They had a new tire here.
It was one that they used at like Charlotte, I think, or something like that.
I thought Denny said it was a new tire, but maybe it's just new. Maybe
it
it's just
been.
new to Vegas.
Yeah. I thought they said they had used it at Charlotte. I could be completely wrong, but I knew it was a different tire than the prior year. So
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I kind of just blocked it out after it was over, but I don't know. I felt like there was some I think that Ryan Blaney had a rocket ship. He just kept getting into positions where he had to drive through the field.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it would have been interesting to see if he would have made his way into the front row between him and Larson and Byron, who had the best car.
So I thought it was an average race. Once again, it was tough to pass the leader after 2 or 3 laps. If you hadn't got it within then, it was tough. Really didn't see a lot of drivers other than, Blaney and Larson drive up, through the field. I thought it was, wasn't horrible. I thought it was just average. So,
no, and like I said, Josh Berry kind of stepped out or kind of showed out in the beginning, right? He just consistently drove around the top 10. I don't know if I would consider him having a race-winning car by any means, but he was definitely consistent. He deserved to be in the top 10 all day.
Any takeaways from that race? I have 2.
One big one to me, Ty Gibbs completely done.
It's interesting that you bring that up because that's one of my takeaways. I'm not going to sit here and defend Ty Gibbs. All right.
I was ready for it.
He's had a lot of bad results. All right. And he has to own those results. But I don't think it's getting enough attention. Everybody's focusing on Ty Gibbs. When in reality, if Chris Bell finishes 4th, 8th, and 12th in the 3 wins, all right, in his 3 wins, he's basically right now covering up for JGR. Because Denny Hamlin and Chase Briscoe have not had any speed either whatsoever. And you can blame Ty Gibbs, but for 3 weeks in a row, the 3 races that have been non-super speedway package, his car has not been fast whatsoever. I feel like he could put anybody in that car and it would struggle. It's consistently been
in the 54?
Yeah, 25th to 35th place.
But why do you think they're so far off the mark?
I don't know if they're just putting everything in the bell, or in the back of my head, you remember last year, that engineer that
well, didn't one of the crew chiefs from the 54 go to the 11?
Yeah, he did. But remember last year, the engineer that
I remember the debacle, right?
I don't know what.
Never
maybe
got
he's
confirmation
gone.
on what happened to.
Maybe he's
KD
gone,
either.
and maybe he was that important to them. I don't know.
It's just hard for me to square the fact that you have 3 other, and I don't know, Briscoe kind of hot on him out of the gate, kind of cooled off a little bit.
They haven't had any.
How are they far off?
You think of Denny Hamlin the last 2 years at 1.5-mile tracks? He's been the fastest, or Larson's been the fastest? He was nowhere near being anywhere close to being the fastest at Las Vegas.
Yeah, and we can touch on this more later, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's going on with Denny. We talked about all that stuff in the, in prior shows about where's his head's at with everything going on. Obviously, he's got a multitude of other things going on. Yeah. But did you see he just signed a new sponsor?
Yeah, with Progressive, 18 races.
Yep. So I don't know. Maybe that kind of gets his head back in the right direction. I don't know. Well,
yeah, but I don't know if it's as much his head or Ty Gibbs' head or Chase Briscoe head. The cars just aren't fast.
yeah. I mean, the other thing that you bring up is like Bell didn't have a dominating car, or even really. I don't even know if he had race winning speed at Vegas.
No. He got up in the second at one time, and then there was the end of the stage or a caution or something, and then he had his pit issues and all that.
But it wasn't like he was driving through the field to get there. I think he was making up spots on pit road or
right.
Some other things. I don't think he necessarily drove through the field. So
in my opinion, it's a JGR problem, and it's not being talked about enough. Everybody's focused on Ty Gibbs.
Well, have you seen the issue that they were talking about with Toyota in general? They were having throttle body issues. Across all of Toyota. Yeah, and I think like the 23XI cars had power steering issues too. I know Reddick did that one race.
Yep.
But powered through. But
my other takeaway was Ford. Best mile and a half racing performance from that manufacturer in a while. Logano led laps. Cindric was up there. Obviously, Barry was up there the whole race. Blaney was very fast. I'm going to have to keep an eye on at least the Penske portion of Ford at these mile and a halves, because they're much faster than what they have been at this time prior years.
Well, that Wood Brothers car is just a Penske development car, wouldn't you say?
Correct. Oh yeah, it's a Penske. I consider it Penske.
Yeah. So I mean, they didn't really jump off the page in terms of practice times. Like Blaney kind of did, but then obviously he got loose and went into the wall. But none of them really jumped out off the page, and then they all qualified well, and I just kind of assumed that they would, like Logano. I just kind of assumed they'd go backwards, but he held pretty good pace up front. Maybe a lot of it's just clean air, but I mean Ford did look good. And I don't know I don't know what to take away from Penske being this strong this early.
Right. Yeah. So definitely gonna have to keep an eye on them. So, all right. Anything else with the race from Sunday?
Just that I'm glad it's over and we can move on to a new week. So,
Okay.
Well, let's head into Miami. Obviously, like you said, really 1.5 high tire wear intermediate. True comp for you is probably Darlington, probably the closest one.
I would say Darlington's 1.33 miles, I believe. So yeah, Darlington.
But in terms of tire wear, probably the closest.
It doesn't have the extreme tire wear that Darlington does. All right, it doesn't have the shape that Darlington has, but I think it's more of a comp than, let's say, Las Vegas, Kansas, Charlotte, Texas.
And do you think that this track is more unique than any of them due to the different racing lines you see consistently ran here? Obviously Larson and Reddick are known for running the fence here. But like we see in the Xfinity series, there's a lot of guys that can make up a lot of speed on the bottom too.
Yes. Yeah. It's a great racetrack. There's still a lot of people that want to see the championship race here. But next to Kansas, I would say this is probably one of the better racetracks for actual racing. So, another thing, that I'm hearing, see what you're interested in, is, do you think the track's going to be different in March versus October, November, which is what it usually is? I hear people saying, it sits in the sun all summer, blah, 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 blah. So, maybe there's more grip. It's not as slick, et cetera, et cetera.
My thought is it's Miami, right? It's going to be hot. The sun's out. I don't know how much different, I'd have to go back and look at okay, what temp did they run the October race in versus what temp are we going to run this race in?
Yeah. I could be completely wrong, but I think it's just, noise.
And to your point, I don't know if it's so much the weather that would concern me, is something that we kind of talked about it being a playoff race and how many people are not
Right.
trying to make, or how many people are trying to just not get caught up in something with the playoff driver.
Hmm.
So maybe
Right.
this is a little more racy in the beginning of the
Hmm.
year than
Yep.
in the later part of the year, but I think this is another one of these racetracks where we get a pretty good idea early who's fast.
Exactly. Yep. We do.
And the other thing, listening back to some of the commentary, would you say that the preferred line would be as close to the wall as possible? There's some theories from the NASCAR drivers that it puts less stress on the equipment to run on the fence than it is to run lower. You're not stressing the tires as much,
Right.
um, etc. So,
Right.
would you say that's what makes Larson and Reddick stand out here more than the others?
Yeah, I think it makes them stand out more, but it's also higher risk being up there. Like and it all comes down to comfortability, because I can guarantee you on Saturday when you watch the Xfinity race, Justin Allgaier will be taking the middle line because that's where he feels comfortable. He won't get all the way up onto the wall. So I think a
Well,
lot
he
of it
ran
has
it
to
in
do with that.
Xfinity and he complained.
So I just think a lot of it has to
And
do with
and
the
so
driver
to your point there
comfortability.
with Larson, Larson ran the wall last year and
Mhm.
he cut a tire and then clipped a wall, and you lose all race pace.
Right.
With these cars if you clip that toe at
Hmm.
you know.
Yep.
So yeah,
All
it's
right.
gonna be it's you're definitely playing the fine line, especially
And,
when Larson is priced at 3-1 in the market.
mhm,
There
mhm.
is FanDuel right now is showing a 5-1. So I guess we just talk about the outright market
Well,
as of
real,
right now.
real, real quick before we
Yeah.
get into that, I think it would be um, unfair justice if we do not mention the race last year with Mr. Tyler Reddick just putting the pedal to the metal on that last lap and getting it
So
done.
I'm glad you brought that up, because do you remember? Do you remember how it played out?
Yeah, yeah.
And do you remember where we were sitting? And I think, if I recall, I'm screaming,
Hmm.
why did Blaney let him have the wall?
Right.
Blaney gets out of the way.
Hmm. Yep.
That to me didn't make any sense. Now, if I remember right, I think Reddick was on newer tires, or maybe they were all equal equipment.
It could I cannot answer, but like it would have been appropriate if we had enough time to go back and find the end of the race clip from last year. So
Yeah, I watched it. I watched it back.
yeah,
I don't even remember what night,
but
but
that
I
that
just
was
remember.
incredible driving.
Yeah, it's just it baffles me
Right.
that Blaney made the decision to give him that high lane and not block
Hmm.
him.
Right.
Especially when at that point, like, Blaney's racing for a championship. You know,
Yes.
like,
Yes.
why would you give another playoff driver that line? So, anyways,
All right. All
um,
right. Let's start with the outrights. So I'll use FanDuel. Um, if you want to pull up another book, you have your spreadsheet. I don't know. We can do that. But I would assume that your top three drivers in no order: Larson, Reddick, Blaney.
mhm, you are 100% correct.
Okay. Rank the three of them when it comes to track fit.
I mean, just back to the napkin math. I'm saying it's Larson 1. Uh, it's got to be Reddick 2 and Blaney 3. If I'm not taking anything else into consideration other than how they ran here.
Okay. I agree with you on that. How far off is Blaney in track fit, in your opinion, to the other two?
It's I don't know if I'd say he's far off, but I don't know if I could put him like current form, I think I would almost put Blaney ahead of Reddick.
Hold on.
But
We'll get to there in a minute. Let's just stay on track fit.
okay.
Because what I find interesting is he's run well here, but at Darlington, the other track that we said was a comp, he has not been good at. All right. So is the tire wear just enough where it falls off here that it really doesn't affect him? Whereas at Darlington, the tire wear really affects him. I don't know.
Well, and the thing about this racetrack too is like Larson and Reddick run that high line better than everybody. And Blaney's
Right.
not. I don't put Blaney into that running the fence here.
Correct.
And if you look at his average finishes,
Mhm.
he has the. I'm going to throw Allmendinger out. Obviously, like that, we can touch on that later. But he has an average finish of 7th here, 2 top 5s out of 3 races, led 100 laps. He's just very good here, and I don't know if we can attribute that to Penske being good late in the season for these playoff races, or if this is just he's just comfortable with this track. You don't see him running the wall.
Okay. So next question, when it comes to track history in this car only, 3 races, how do you rank the 3 of them?
I think I put Larson 1, and I don't know. It's very difficult for me to say Blaney or Reddick because
I agree with you. I think this one right here is much tougher, and the 3 of them are very close to each other in my opinion. Because Tyler Reddick and Kyle Larson running that wall, can hit at any time. So they're running a much higher risk race. And then also, just in general, Kyle Larson on 1.5 tracks has been boom or bust. All right. And the boom part is he's been fast in just about every single one of them. The bust part is, he hits that wall, he spins out, stuff seems to happen to him quite often on the 1.5 miles. So I think that one's a very tough one to rank. All right. And then the last question I have for you with those 3. Rank him 2023 speed.
Oh, well, I have that in front of me if you want the data. But Larson was 1, and Blaney was 2.
Excuse me. Not 2023. This year's speed. I'm sorry.
This year's speed, I would say, I think Blaney has the most raw speed out of the 3. And then I think Reddick might be a strong second. He's had really good pace, but then we get back into the 1.5 miles last week, and Larson had the car to beat, in my opinion. It would have been nice to see Blaney up front to see what they would have had. But Reddick tended to drift in that race, if I remember right, quite a backwards. Do you remember him passing cars up front?
No.
So, I think going off a very, very small 2025 sample size of one race, I think it's
3 races
probably,
in general. 3 races.
I think that it's hard to ignore the speed that Penske in general has brought to the tracks.
Right. I would rank it Blaney, Larson, Reddick from that point. So
we've just seen Kyle Larson make this field look dumb at this track.
So usually on Sunday nights, I write down the drivers' names. I look at stuff and I try to come up with a number of what I think the books will open them at. I didn't get to do that this week. Didn't want to. So I knew Kyle Larson and Tyler Reddick were going to be the favorites. All right. Were you shocked to see Ryan Blaney's number right there with him?
Yeah, to a degree. And then when I started to look into the why, it makes a lot more sense.
I
But
100% agree.
initial read was Larson, Reddick, blank. Like field.
Right,
and then you could move them a little bit.
right.
Um, I guessed I didn't guess at Larson, but I guessed that Reddick would be in the 450 range, and
Mhm.
then he's roughly right there.
Right.
But I
So,
think Larson deserves to be your favorite here.
right. I agree with what you just said specifically. Um, I didn't think much of Blaney when I saw that, and then once I started looking into it, yeah, I think he deserves it. You because really, the only thing, like when we ranked those three drivers in those three different categories, the only one that Blaney wasn't really good at was track fit. But in reality, it must be a good fit when you look at his results.
Yeah, so you go back. So the three races that they've ran here, he's finished 17th in 2022, and then second and second.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's like he's more consistent than Reddick and Larson here in the next gen car, but it's because they run the
Right.
wall in one slip up when you're running that
Right.
close. You cause
Right.
any damage, you're just cooked.
And to what you said earlier, I think people will come back at you and say, well, it's a fall race. Penske's in form at that time. No doubt
Penske
about
might
it.
be in form right now.
No doubt about it. But to what you just said is what I was going to say. They have never been running this well, at this time of year. So,
Ryan Blaney
you
actually has the best average speed rank here in the next
Mhm,
gen car.
mhm.
Larson right behind him, Byron right behind him, and then it goes like I think Reddick is 7th. Now there's some outliers in there, like Hocevar is in there, but he's only ran one race here.
Right.
But
Okay.
Blaney
So,
he deserves to be where he is.
mhm, I do. So at FanDuel, they have 500 on Larson, 650 on Reddick, 7 on Blaney. I assume those are probably the best numbers by far.
That is the fairest market out there for your three favorites.
Yeah. And it's not close, right?
Yeah, so the books are kind of weird with Blaney. Caesars has them at 4-1. FanDuel's got 7. Like DK's 5. Bet365 is 450. So it's the spectrum, or I guess the range there is from 4-1 to 7-1. And then Reddick, kind of in that same boat, but his highest number is 650, and that's at FanDuel. So
Right.
I don't
So
know. I
are you
feel like
going
the
to try to
books are
have
struggling
tickets
with
on all
those
three
two.
of them? You're going to have try to have tickets on all three of them?
Yeah, I don't know how you can't really.
Okay.
I don't know how you pick who to fade out of the three. I feel like
Right.
I got I know I'm gonna have a ticket on all three of them. It gets tougher for me on who the fourth is. I don't necessarily know if I want 5 tickets going into this race,
All right.
but
So
I know
so
the
let's
three.
move into the fourth and fifth. I think I could be wrong, but I think the next two would be Byron and Bell. And I don't think you can really put anybody else in the group with them after that.
Well, the wild card there is Denny Hamlin. Does Denny Hamlin finally bring speed? And if you are convinced that JGR does not have that speed right now, I don't think you can put him in there. But Byron, I think his race pace to start the year, um, I think I think he's kind of separated himself as that fourth option,
Mhm.
but that's
So you brought up speed. If I asked you the question, rank them the three before on their speed 2025. If you put Byron in there and you put Bell in there, where would they shake out with the other three?
you're saying with the first three that we mentioned,
Yeah,
where do they
yeah.
shake out in terms of that?
Where would you put Byron and Bell in there? Where would they fall?
Man, I feel like Byron would be ahead of Bell to me.
I don't disagree with you because of what you said earlier. Chris Bell just didn't seem like he had the speed this past weekend, which is
Do you think?
concerning.
I'm trying to remember back to Phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that did he have the speed at Phoenix? I know
Yeah,
Byron's been good.
yeah, yeah. I think he had speed.
Okay. Yeah, so I don't. The more I lean into it, the more I think about it. I think that Byron's kind of that fourth guy, but it's really tough to. Um,
So you would put Byron fourth.
yeah, I think that I would put him. I just don't. I don't know. I feel like I'm on those three top cars more than any other
Right. But let's just
right
talk
now.
strictly speed from this year. All right.
Oh, you okay?
I might put Byron first.
Well, that's tough because I like. Well, I guess if you're taking the road courses and everything else into account, yes. I
Hmm.
was going to say I think he has more speed than Larson early
Right.
this year.
But you don't think he
But
has
then
more
it's like
speed than
Blaney
Blaney.
to me. Then I think it's Ryan Blaney.
So who's first? Byron or Blaney?
God, I wish I could have saw how last race played out. I think I'd put Blaney ahead of Byron.
Oh man, you still wanting to sleep with his lady.
He is a looker, Coop.
Yep. So I would put Byron in front of Blaney.
Yeah.
But
Listen,
I
I
think
got to be
it's
different
close.
here. I can't agree with
It's
you on
close.
everything,
It's
and the
close.
show's boring.
Yeah, that's fine. It's close. I don't want you to agree with me on everything because then the shows are completely boring. And I hate watching shows like that. But I just and I don't I just think it's a little bit more Byron over Blaney. And then Larson. I don't know. Like, where would you put Bell? Would you put Bell in front of Larson? Can we agree that Reddick would be fifth out of the five?
I think when we know we're going to another 1.5, I'm just going to say Larson would be ahead of Bell for me.
Okay. Yeah. I can't disagree with that. I think it's close though. But Reddick
Right.
would be
So
fifth,
how do
right?
you shake out the four who I guess who's your fourth? Because we already know that like the top three they deserve where they are, and we're going
Um,
to have a ticket on them. You'd agree that you have to have a ticket on all three.
yes. Byron
So
would
who's
be my
four?
fourth because I don't know. I might be overreacting. I might be putting in too much in my head. But the JGR speed, Bell wasn't that great fast wise. Byron's been fast every week. Byron's been good here too. He has a win, not in this car, but has a win. So my concern though with Byron is when there's tire wear, he's a very, very strong starter. But like after 20 laps, it just seems like he steadily starts to lose time or fall back in positions.
Well, you know what's funny is so if we go back to I won't include Auto Club, but if you take Darlington and Homestead average speed ranks since 2023. So that would be obviously both runs at Darlington and then Homestead. So what is that, 6 races? So 6 races, average speed rank, Will Byron is ahead of Denny,
Mm-hmm.
second to only Larson. And if I
Okay.
look at just the speed rank at Homestead, it's Blaney 1, Larson a smidge behind. You can't really tell the difference. And then
Mm-hmm.
Byron right behind him. And Byron is tied with Denny. So he carries speed throughout this racetrack.
Yep. So what's the best numbers? 850 is what FanDuel has. Anything better than that?
He was 10 there, but yeah, 850 is currently the best number out. He's as low as 6 and as high as 850.
So at this time right now, for me, I can't bet 5. Well, we'll get to that later. But between the two, it would be Willie B for me.
Over Bell.
Yes.
Do you think that it's clear? Like, you're not going to throw him into a bucket. You're not going to throw him in a, say, Byron Bell Hamlin bucket. You're just going to
I don't
say
think
Byron is
I
short.
can't put Hamlin in that bucket.
if he goes out there and dusts in this new progressive scheme he's in now, I'm gonna be a little miffed, to be honest. I'm holding his under 3.5 season wins.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Right.
would I'd like to see him continue to, I don't mind Denny. The more I listen to the podcast, I'm a
Yeah.
Denny fan off
Mhm.
the track.
Yeah.
So
Just let them hit
yeah.
the slots again. They have
Did you
casinos
hear how
down
much he
bad.
actually took away, Coop?
So, I know
Did
he
you
won
hear how much
twice,
he
right?
actually took away?
Right. How much?
300 and something.
Yeah. Not a bad payday for him.
He said he gave it back about, I can't remember. He gave back quite a bit in at the blackjack table, but he said it like, I don't know, 10 grand or something. I don't know. But
Yeah. I don't know.
yeah.
So,
So hold on. So real quick before we go off of Denny, because I thought he brought up some good points on
okay.
his podcast. I don't know if you ever listened to his podcast. But
I don't have time, Meyer. I'm sorry.
all right. Well, I'm going to let you know. So his co-host specifically asked him, "What can NASCAR fans take away from practice data to know if these guys are going to be good or if they're not good?"
Mm-hmm.
And Denny was saying, like for him specifically, he's like, as I'm getting older as a driver, he goes, we don't go out on Saturday and go balls to the wall. He goes, you're probably not going to see me towards the top of the charts and anything. He goes, I'm more about taking care of the car. He's like, I've wrecked too many really fast race cars on Saturday to have it affect me on race day. So, you know, I think his frame of mind on Saturday is to just go out there and learn about how the car is driving and what
Mm-hmm.
they would like to change. But I would not expect him to blow you away in any practice this year.
Right. He basically he said he's more like a Kevin Harvick, where practice never meant anything to him. He was just working on setups and the feel of the car and making sure things are right and things of that nature. Trying
Yeah,
different
and he
lines
brought up
probably.
right, and he brought up the whole Group 1 versus Group 2 theory about putting
Mm-hmm.
rubber down the green racetrack versus having rubber laid down. He says, if somebody spins out in Group 1 and we start to, if people drive around and pick up that rubber, he's like, then Group 2 could be really fast out of the gate too.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, it's really tough to kind of, from his point of view, to kind of decipher who the really strong cars are in practice based off of just practice data.
So basically, after listening to him, what are your thoughts on practice now?
It kind of gave me a different perspective, maybe just for him in general.
He
Because
didn't
would you
mention
say that
any other drivers that really want to really go balls to wall, or drivers that take it like he does.
he didn't really mention anybody specifically? I wonder how
Mm-hmm.
you feel about the younger drivers. Do they go out there and push? Maybe they're just not afraid of,
Mm-hmm.
wadding up any of these cars in practice. But
Right.
yeah, I don't know. It's a new perspective to me, and because I went and looked back at practice data for Homestead last year. Do you know
Mm-hmm.
who was at the top of the chart for every interval?
Last year, who was at the top of the chart for every interval?
Other than the 30 or 35 lap.
Other than the 30 or 35 lap. I'm going to take a wild stab at William Byron.
No. Noah
Okay.
Gragson.
Okay.
So that to me just said I don't think he didn't stand out in the race at all. So but after him was clearly Tyler Reddick. So I don't know. Maybe he just went out and pushed it really hard. I don't know. But
Okay.
how would you say
Because
that practice data
if
is
you really
correlated
look
to
at it,
races?
like the practice data from this past weekend didn't correlate. And some drivers it did, and others, like Byron, was fast. He was up there most of the time. Chastain was one of the fastest in practice, but I don't know. He wasn't up there the whole time. And then the Fords obviously were horrible in practice, but track position did them very well.
Well, the thing that bugged me out about that for all series was that Group 2 was faster than Group 1 most for all series. And every time that they would get on, and the commentators would always say, whoever's in the booth would say, Group 1 is usually going to go out faster on a green racetrack. So that was interesting. What do you think? We could talk about the rest of the stuff
Right.
after. But so after
After those
Denny,
two,
yeah. So you're in this Chase Elliott, Ross Chastain, Logano bucket. Now the odds are a big shift after you get off of Elliott. I think
correct.
early in the week, Elliott opened 18-1. That numbers went down across mostly all the books. Now it's more in that 14 range, 15. What do you think about Chase?
Right. To sum up, Denny, I'm not going to bet him. I have to see it first. Are you going to take a stab at him?
No. So knowing what I just heard from him,
Right.
or not personally, but what I just heard from him on his own podcast, I think it's just a wait and see. I don't know how hard he's going to press it, and I think that there's a better chance that number goes in our favor than the other way.
Okay. Chase Elliott, I mean, he showed some speed here last year, but when you look at the other 1.5-mile tracks, it wasn't very great for him when it comes to speed. I think Chase will be solid, running maybe 4th to 8th most of the day. I don't know if he's going to have a race-winning car, though.
Yeah, I would agree. The one thing is, I do remember I did bet him live at 20-1. It was more of just to play up the number last week.
Mm-hmm.
He did have some good speed early, but again, when you get mixed up in some of that, in traffic, I just don't think his car carried the same speed that Larson and Byron had. And
Right.
I think that probably continues going into this race.
Right. Ross and Joey. Ross is 22 and Joey's 22 at FanDuel. We're starting to get into bigger numbers now.
I know. I just never feel like I know what to do with Ross Chastain, to be honest.
Right.
He's just never a guy that I'm like, I'm betting Ross before practice and qualifying.
But do you think like Ross had a race-winning car last week?
I thought there was a moment in time that I did, and it was late, and it burned me. But
so Kyle Larson clearly had the best car. All right.
maybe with Byron.
Ryan Blaney was probably behind him. All right. But who would you put 3rd, 4th, and 5th last week? As far as like potential race-winning cars based off of what you saw from a speed perspective.
So much of these races are a little bit blurry for me when I come back without rewatching them, but I would say Byron would probably be my 3rd, and then it's probably Ross in there.
Okay. Like, I don't know if I would put Ross in the top 5, but then to your point, I don't know who 4 and 5 would be.
Well, that's what I was going to say. So if you're not putting him there, who are you putting there?
Right. So, like, I don't know after those 3 drivers if there was anybody who was really clearly cut. Like, I think it's kind of open then.
Well, what do you think? What do you think about Cindric's speed? Do you think it's just because they had clean air that he was able to go up there and run like that?
But I mean, he was solid. He impressed me much better than what I thought. He couldn't stay up there like Barry did, though.
Well, Logano was out there for a ways in stage 1, 2 in clean air. So, like, the Penske cars, like, that's why it would have been interesting to see what Blaney would have done in clean air.
Right.
Because we knew he was driving through the field.
Right. But, I won't take a Ross or Joey ticket this week. I got to see it on the track from Ross first. And I don't think this is a great track for Joey in general. When I look at his numbers, he has 1 top 10. Best finish here is 8th in this car.
He's got a 4th place finish, 22. Oh, sorry, hold on. That's speed ranks. My bad. That's my bad. Yeah, I mean, historically, he hasn't really carried the speed here, and he hasn't really carried the speed on high tire wear tracks. So like, I'm just not. Yeah, I'm not gonna have. I'm not. I have no interest in Logano, and I think that like I'm almost out on Ross, but I'd have to see practice and qualifying.
Chase Elliott's best finish here is a 5th. Ross Chastain, best finish here
Didn't
is
Chase get second last year?
2nd.
Or no, that was Blaney did.
And that's just in this car, you know. So after them, we're getting into some bigger numbers. We have Kyle Busch at 22, Bowman at 3, Briscoe at 3, Barry at 31.
So, just the elephant in the room here. I mean, I don't know if this is overreaction, but that is a drastic number move on Josh Berry. Before P and Q last week, he was 100. Actually, I'll tell you. I think he was over 100 to 1. He was 100 to 1 at every shop but Bet365 before qualifying, before practice and qualifying. Now they want to line him at 30. I just can't. I'll never bet Josh Berry at that number.
Okay.
Based off of that result.
So if you look, he's raced here before in the Cup Series. Started 11th, finished 12th, or started 12th, finished 11th. He's pretty good at managing tires. He showed some speed. I'm not going to bet him. I don't think he can win 2 in a row.
Would that be the most shocking thing? You'd be way more shocked if he won 2 in a row than if I don't even know how to even put that into perspective. That would be the most shocking thing I think I would have seen this year.
He would win before any of his Penske teammates.
Yeah, I can't.
Yeah.
That number is that number is bonkers. I mean, there was a 50 to 1 on MGM for him.
Any interest in KB? I don't. He kind of fluttered last week prior to his issues, falling back, didn't show the speed. No for me.
Yeah, I think he qualified well, started 4th, but I don't think he moved forward once in that race.
He went back. The whole time. So and again, if you look here, I can't even find his results.
You want just his finishes?
I mean, if you haven't pulled up, I'm having problems finding his name.
So 9th in 2022, 18th in 2023, 31st in 2024. Average finish of 19th.
All right. Bowman, the showman.
He's an interesting guy. I think he's been quietly, well, I can't say they've been the most consistent of the Hendrick drivers, but he's been damn good. I think you got to put him ahead of it. Like, don't you think he's kind of to the point where you would say, is he
equal to Chase Elliott in speed?
Yeah.
You can say it, Meyer.
I don't want to shock anybody. I don't want to get reprimanded like last week.
I think
Bowman has been damn good.
Yeah, he has. He hasn't been good.
I don't know if there's all this chatter about somebody taking his ride or what's going on. You remember all the rumors last year about Bowman could be out at Hendrick or what? But I mean, he's looked pretty damn good. Now, with all that said, I won't have a ticket on him. Not before the race starts by any means. But
best finish here is 7th. That's his only top 10 in here. But no, I will not have Alex Bowman on my bingo card. All right, so now we get into something that's kind of, crossing my mind.
Talk to me, Cooper.
I don't know how other books are, but Josh Berry was 3,100. The next driver is 4,800. Okay.
I know who you're talking about.
So we have Keselowski, Cindric, Hocevar, Buescher, Bubba Wallace, all at 4,800. Ryan Preece at 5, Suarez at 55, Gibbs at 55. Okay. I don't want to overreact to one race. With Josh Berry winning, all right, because it's not going to happen all the time.
Or maybe ever again this year.
Maybe. But those numbers are something. On some cars that you would say have shown speed, have had decent history here, have had a good run or two here. Like, are we to the point where we just take a unit and take 4 or 5 drivers at 50 to 1 and longer and hope? And then, like, obviously you're only putting 0.20 to 0.25 down on them, but at least gives you a taste. And it gives you the ability, instead of like when they get to 25 or 30, you already have that taste. So maybe you can let them get down to 12 and 15. And like, you can see if they really have it when they're 25 to when they get down to 12 or 15. Or are we just throwing a unit away?
I mean, how often are you throwing a unit away? That's my question.
Well,
results
if
based.
they're going to continue to do this, you can't do it one week. I think you have to do it every week. And like, it might not be 5 drivers. Maybe one week it's just 3 drivers.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. So would you really bundle 5 this week? You listed?
I don't know. That's what we're going to
5
talk
drivers.
about. That's what we're going to talk about. Okay. So let's talk about Keselowski and Buescher. Is 4,800 the best number on them?
The best number on Kes currently is 60. Well, I can't say currently. When I wrote them down and captured them on my spreadsheet, Kes was 60. 365.
Okay. So I'll go back and look real quick. But my concern with them, all right, is the speed. Buescher showed a little bit of speed. Keselowski, to me, really hasn't. Like, I think Ryan Preece in some instances has been better than Brad Keselowski when it comes to speed this year. I think they've been the biggest disappointment so far. But with that said, I think the expectations were much higher for them at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been on their top Fords a couple of times, right? They've just kind of, I don't know, let us down, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And like, Pez he hasn't been like terrible here in terms of like average finish on these higher, in terms of average speed on these high tire wear places, but his last 2 have not been good on high tire wear tracks.
He's still 60 to 1 at 365.
Okay, well, I know I'm throwing Ty Gibbs out of the bucket that you said.
Right. I agree with you. Okay. So that leaves in that bucket Austin Cindric and Bubba Wallace at 4,800.
Like, I never know what to do with Bubba either. Like, he's never a guy that I think I'll ever want to be on free. But the numbers are definitely floating out there. He's not. I mean, he's got 1 top 10 here in 2 races.
I mean, we bet Bubba last week, and it's easy to go back and money quarterback you. We should have never bet him because he got up there, but he wasn't passing. Like, when he got up there, he slowly fell back, and then obviously he had the big issue, which took him out. But
he qualifies well here.
Right.
Out of his two races here, his average start is 5th. So, I mean, I think that speaks more to where Tyler Reddick probably is going to start. Because I think Reddick's going to be fast. I don't know if I fully got a grasp on how this affects qualifying with just this straight run through, no groups. I'm not sure if that's a net positive for those drivers or not, because I think it gives a lot of edge, not really edge, but it gives a lot to the guys going later.
Right. Any interest in Cindric?
No. Not
Okay.
pre. There's only one person that you mentioned that I have interest in, and
I haven't mentioned him yet. I haven't mentioned him yet.
You did?
When I ran down the entire list, I mentioned them. I didn't want to start with him because I know it's an auto bet for you. But go ahead.
Well, it's not. They forced my hand. It's so I can't auto bet Carson Hocevar at 50. I thought I could still get 70, maybe, but I can't.
You don't even want to put down a quarter of a unit at 50?
Can I tie into Lando and get 90?
Why do you need to tie a 50 to 1?
I'm greedy now.
Oh my God.
Because they took it away from me. I bet him at 100 last week. That's why.
You want to tie a 50 to 1 to make it 90.
Yeah.
You lost your mind?
No.
You lost your mind?
I'd bet him the most fastest laps too. I didn't actually bet that, but
wait a minute. You already have that ticket.
Which ticket? I don't have any I don't have any outrights.
Okay.
For this race yet.
But you wouldn't put a quarter of a unit on him at 50.
I might put a half unit on him at 50.
Oh wow. So he had
I
speed.
want to see his I'm more interested in his top 5 and top 10 numbers, but
he had speed last week. Ty didn't do him any favors twice. Which really kept us away from seeing. But again, Hendrick Motorsports engine. I think this is a track where it's boom or bust for him. Because
I feel like that's most of his
driver.
Races.
He's an aggressive driver. And this is a track that will allow you to be aggressive. All right. So I think it could really show his ability as a driver, but that ability can get snapped up and gone just like that because it's not an easy track to manage and drive.
No, and like you got to think that aggressiveness probably hurts him a little bit on tire wear.
Right.
So,
but I mean he won.
I think he's got a race win here in a truck.
Right.
What's that?
That's what I was saying. He has a race win here in a truck.
Yeah, and he was relatively fast. He was the 8th average speed ranked driver here last year.
Yeah.
And he made quality passes. He passed Chris Bell. I think he passed Byron. Like he passed good cars in that run.
Mm-hmm.
I just worry about, does he have to have a short run to get there?
Right. Okay. So tune in later to see if Hocevar ends up. I guess from what I was saying, if I want to take a shot on somebody long, Hocevar would be my first one. All right.
I agree.
All right. After Ty Gibbs at 5,500, it really drops down once again. There's really only 2 drivers, I think, that interest me. Well, one that interests me, probably interests you, and then there's one that interests you that really doesn't interest me. So we'll start with Noah.
I know which one doesn't interest you.
Yeah. Let's start with Noah Gragson, 100 to 1. I don't know if it's better than any other book, but that's what FanDuel has.
Well, Canby opened him at 250 to 1.
Wow.
So if you want to throw a quarter, well, I don't think you even have access anymore. I'm pretty sure you probably
I have no bet
welcome.
No.
I don't know if that number is still available, but there is 150. There was 150 at Caesars and 150 at ESPN, and then outside of that 250 to 1, it's 100 everywhere else.
Yeah, he's 100 at 365. But at 100, he would be the other one that would interest me at throwing a long shot.
Is that just you completely buying into the Ford speed that they've shown?
The Ford speed, and I think that he's another driver that will be aggressive, boom or bust. this type of track can show his racing abilities. He's not bad when it comes to managing tires either. So I know I told Keg last week I was worried about Front Row Motorsports when it comes to speed on the 1.5 miles because they really didn't have it last year. Gilliland showed that. Zane was all right. But, Graxon, do you think Graxon moved up last week from speed, or do you think he moved up from like pits and strategy and things of that nature?
I would just be spitballing if I said anything. I'd have to go back and look. I honestly don't remember. I remember him running up there because we had bet his top Ford and it had life. But then every time you look up, Logano was in front of him or Buescher was in front of him. Obviously, Barry was there all day, so it really wasn't the sweat that we wanted it to be. But it is promising to see where he was. Outside of the wreck, I think he had a legitimate shot at finishing inside the top 10.
Okay. All right.
And if you go back to his Xfinity, he has one race here, one win.
Right. So, all right, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
No, so you had me second guessing, but it's hard to overlook what AJ Allmendinger has done here. And I understand that when we talked about it being late in the year, and maybe people aren't driving as hard outside the playoff drivers and whatnot. But Coop, I'm throwing the 2022 race out. He started 25th in 2023 and drove his way in to the top 5. I'm actually going to pull that up just so I remember or actually know this correctly. So started 25th, finished 5th, and then he started 32nd last year, drove to 8th. Finished stage 2 and 10th. Now, that 2023 race where he's finished 5th, he didn't finish any stage in the top 10 outside of the final stage. But he did have an ability to just drive forward. I watched last year's race. He consistently drove forward, but he did make up a lot of track position late. It's just hard to overlook that he has he's tied for the best average finish here in 3 races at the number. Now, do I think he has a race-winning car? Absolutely not. But I remember specifically going into last week, we were talking. He kind of stood out to me as being in the top 10, and you said that Kaulig has looked better.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if I would ever play this outright, but I would be interested in his other props. I would say. I know our good buddy Ryan is on the dinger shot at I think 80-1. And I think they were mentioning that he's going to go out later in qualifying. So I don't know. Maybe if you think he can continue to run well here and you want to have an absolute lottery ticket in your pocket with somebody who consistently seems to be able to finish this race well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I couldn't knock anybody for putting that ticket in their pocket.
Right. I was looking at his Xfinity results here. The one race I found wasn't great. It was right around top 10, didn't lead any laps. The next one, 2022, started 13th, finished 3rd.
So I watched that Xfinity race back. He drove forward, but then stalled out.
Started 24th, finished 14th, but he did lead 45 laps in 2021 in Xfinity. And then I'll check one more. Started 38th, finished 4th, didn't lead any laps. So, obviously the track, sets well with him. I will tell you, and one more could do for you. I first noticed.
What is that? A could-do?
Yep. One more AJ, when I saw his numbers, I said, all right, he's got these 3 top 10s, 2 top 5s. Like, are they really legit? So, or did he backdoor them? So I pulled up on Racing Reference how much time he spent in the top 15. The first race, was like 60%. I was like, oh, here we go. Here we go. The next race, 90%.
When you
The
say the
third,
next race, are you going chronologically from 2024 backwards?
I believe it was chronologically.
Okay.
Then the last one, 88% in the top 15. So he has spent a lot of time in the top 15. Not really backdoored it. He has had a good car here. But I also have in the back of my mind, there was a guy with very similar track position results, not position, but results at a race earlier this year, who everybody was happy and on and wanted to, be well, was at Atlanta, Daniel Suarez. And what happened? It wasn't a good day for Danny. So I just think he's overachieved. It's AJ Allmendinger, man.
Yeah. Okay. So what do you say about he started 18th in Vegas and he finished inside the top 10?
Yeah. So, hey, if I was going to do this thing where I just waste a unit and take some long shots, can you still get him at 100?
I don't think he ever actually tipped 100. The best number I have for him was 85 to 1 at FanDuel.
Okay. He would be my third after Graxon and Hocevar. Those would be the three.
Yeah, I would agree. I'd have to dig into Noah a little bit, but like the Xfinity win and kind of what he's shown speed wise the last 2 weeks, I wouldn't blame you if you did. I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't be upset if you split a third of a unit on the three of them and then just whatever happens. But would you ever not have Byron in this scenario where we said, you're going to have the three? Would you ever forego that Byron ticket to split of a third of a unit on those three?
No, I would have Byron first.
Okay. Want to know how you would rank that?
Yeah.
So the lottery tickets would clearly be last, and they would not take your fourth driver spot.
Correct. It would not.
Okay.
Any other long shots you had any interest of? Those are the only ones that came across me.
Yeah, that was really where I was going to leave it to. Obviously there's nobody really. I guess is it just a Hocevar thing, or do you think the Spire has speed in general? Like, what do you think about McDowell? Obviously, he qualified on the pole last week.
Yeah.
Just went straight backwards. I would expect the same. I don't expect him to be a race-winning contender by any means.
Yeah, I don't have an interest in him. So I would agree with what you said too. So
okay, well then,
Zane Smith.
Yeah, I mean,
for you?
Definitely not pre. It would be those guys would all be long or live shots, but they would really have to show me something. I just think there's such a clear difference in those top three, and then I think you could put Byron in there. It's like I'd say those top four and the rest. The problem with like Hocevar, if he qualifies well, that number is going to be even worse.
Correct. And he's been a good qualifier this year.
Well, Aspire in general, right?
Mm-hmm. And I think you might have said this earlier, but I think when you go back to the Denny conversation, he would be one that would be balls to the walls during practice.
Yeah, I think he definitely throws caution to the wind anytime he's on a racetrack. He feels like this year's version of Ross Chastain. When everybody was giving grief to Ross. And I don't know if old Rick Hendrick would sit Hocevar down and tell him not to drive like an asshole, but who knows?
So because he's going to be in a HMS car one day.
Oh, so whose car is he going to be in?
Or it might be a Jeff Gordon race car. I don't know, but it'll be in a Hendrick, Jeff Gordon Chevy. So, I don't know. In the back of my mind, Adam, Like, I don't know how long Larson signed for, but like I could see him going to F1 or Indy.
I haven't heard, but I've seen rumblings on Twitter that Larson would not be in a cup car in like 3 years, maybe
The
even
only
less.
the only thing, like, if he went F1, like, I don't know if they have dirt tracks over in Europe. No idea, and all these other places that they race at, you know. But there's got to be some dirt tracks around because he's not going to stop racing, 2 or 3 or 4 times a week.
Oh, he
No matter what.
owns the series.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of other disciplines he wants to. I think from what I heard is he might want to dip more into the IndyCar pool. I don't know. F1, like I think IndyCar would definitely be first, and then
right.
see where he
Yeah.
goes from there. But
I
if
mean,
Andy Egan can do it, he can do it, right?
I would think it would either be him or Byron. Bowman. Excuse me.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know, like what they do with. Obviously, they have development drivers with.
Don't
I
mention
don't know
Corey.
if Raj will ever make the cut, but Corey Day, they're high, like Larson was high on Corey Day.
Yeah. No, not yet.
But no, I mean, none of those guys would take a spot near before Hosebar.
Correct. So, all right. Anything else you want to add?
Well, I will tell you that Tyler Reddick is bringing the
Oh yeah.
best scheme to the racetrack this weekend.
Yeah.
And it's probably going to cost me a little bit of money because I will own that diecast car.
Yeah. Yep.
So, but outside of that, the parlay pieces are going to be a little interesting this week to see where we land and how we get there. But you got to have those three. Got to have the three.
All right, boys. We will be back on Thursday night to discuss the prop market. And in the meantime, if you enjoyed the video, you can go to Nuke the House. You can use a free week. NASCAR is back. Get you a free week. We also have a code Nuke MLB 10, which will get you 10% off of your monthly subscription price. So give the video a like, leave your comments, and that'll do it for us. We'll be back on Thursday night. Have a good one.